We all love a dark mystery, the kind that makes your skin crawl and your mind race. But sometimes the most chilling stories aren't found in movies. They come from real life. And in the Philippines, before Elsa Castillo shocked the nation in the 1990s, there was another woman whose brutal death changed everything. She was dubbed the original Chop Chop Lady. Her name was Lucil Lalu, young, driven, full of promise, until her life was violently torn apart. And here's the chilling twist. Some believe her killer may have had ties that stretch beyond Manila, all the way to Los Angeles, maybe even to one of America's most infamous unsolved murders, the Black Dahlia. It began on a quiet Sunday morning, May 28, 1967. Manila woke to horrifying headlines that would haunt the city for decades. At dawn, a garbage collector named Pablo Basar was making his usual rounds along Malabon Street in Santa Cruz. It was the kind of job where you learn to ignore smells. But that morning, something was different. The stench wasn't just garbage. It was heavier, sour, unmistakably the smell of decomposition. Curious and unsettled, he investigated a package stuffed inside a garbage can. Wrapped in newspaper dated May 14th were human remains. Not a whole body, but severed legs. 4 of them, pale-skinned, cleanly cut at the knees and thighs, toes still perfectly manicured. Basar stumbled back in horror, his voice breaking as he called for help. The police arrived and confirmed the unthinkable. These weren't medical specimens. They belonged to a young woman. And forensic experts quickly noted something chilling. The flesh showed signs of being frozen before being discarded. Someone had not only killed this woman, they had taken the time to dismember her and store her body like meat. As word spread, Manila held its breath. But the horror wasn't over. The next day, May 29th, another gruesome discovery surfaced. In a vacant lot along Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, just past Guadalupe Bridge, scavengers stumbled upon a torso, headless, legless, dumped like trash. When investigators compared the remains, they realized the legs and torso belonged to the same victim. The city was paralyzed with fear. Who was she? And who could do something like this? It didn't take long for the answer to come. Fingerprints lifted from the hands identified her. Rilio Chantangal, a fingerprint expert with the police, matched the prints to a file. The victim was Lucil Lalu Tolentino, just 29 years old, a waitress turned entrepreneur. She had risen from modest beginnings to own a thriving restaurant and beauty parlor in Manila. Her story was one of ambition and success, until it ended in a nightmare. But even in death, mystery clung to her. Police discovered that the address on her ID card didn't exist. It was as though Lucille lived in 2 worlds, admired in business, but strangely elusive in her personal life. She was real, yet somehow ghost-like in the official record. That duality would only deepen the case's eerie atmosphere. The autopsy revealed more. Lucille was 1 month pregnant. Her body bore no blunt force trauma, only small defensive wounds, cuts and scrapes suggesting she had tried to fight back. But the most shocking detail was the dismemberment. It wasn't chaotic, it wasn't frenzied. The cuts were clean, precise, surgical. Whoever had done this knew anatomy. This wasn't the work of an ordinary murderer. It suggested a professional, a butcher, a medical student, or perhaps even a doctor. The way her body was handled, frozen, and then scattered across the city wasn't impulsive. It was methodical, planned. So who was Lucille really? Born in 1938 in Pampanga, she grew up in a modest family. In 1961, at just 23, she left for Manila, chasing opportunity. She worked as a waitress, saving every peso she could, sending money home, determined to carve out a better life. And she succeeded. With her savings, she opened her own establishment, the Pagoda Soda Fountain, a cocktail lounge that became a popular spot. Later, she expanded into the beauty business, opening a parlor that attracted clients from all over. In less than a decade, she transformed herself from a waitress to a wealthy, independent woman. But success breeds envy, and independence in a young woman during the 1960s was not always admired. To some, Lucille was ambitious and inspiring. To others, she was a woman stepping outside her place, a target for jealousy and resentment. Her personal life, too, was complicated. Lucille had a son, Danilo, with a policeman named Patrolman Aniano Vera. Their relationship was tumultuous. Vera was older, authoritative, prone to jealousy and violence. At the same time, Lucille was involved with a younger lover, Florante Reos, whom she supported financially. Reos was handsome, charming, but dependent on her money. Police questioned him first. Could this have been a crime of passion, a lover enraged? But Reos had an airtight alibi. On the night of the murder, he was drinking with friends in Quezon City. He was quickly ruled out. That left Vera. And suspicion around him grew fast. His jealousy was notorious. He had clashed with Reos before, even drawing his gun in Lucil's establishments. He had a violent streak, a temper that colleagues whispered about. And crucially, as a policeman, he had both the training and the access to resources that might allow him to commit such a crime and cover it up. Investigators dug deeper. Two other men surfaced as possible suspects, a dentistry student and a printing firm executive who had been close to Lucille. But both had solid alibis. Vera remained the focus. On June 6th, Captain Perigo Javier filed murder charges against him, citing his violent history and his connection to Lucille. Witnesses described him as controlling, abusive, and enraged by her independence. And yet, when it came time to present the case, the evidence was thin. The rope used to bind her, the clothing, the newspapers, all had been destroyed or discarded before they could be properly analyzed. The crime scene was a patchwork of gaps, and in those gaps, doubt flourished. Then came a shocking twist. A 28-year-old dental student named José Luis Santiano stepped forward. He confessed. In chilling detail, he described luring Lucille to his room, panicking when she threatened to expose him, killing her, and then dismembering her body. He even admitted to riding in a cab with Patrolman Vera while transporting parts of her corpse. It seemed almost too neat, as though the story had been rehearsed. For a moment, Manila thought the case was solved. A confession is powerful. But then, just as quickly, Santiano recanted. At a press conference, he claimed he had been coerced. He said multiple men had been involved, that he had been forced to stay quiet at gunpoint. The police, however, insisted on keeping his original confession. But the public wasn't convinced. Could a dental student alone really carry out such a meticulous killing? Could he freeze, cut, and scatter a body with such precision? Or was he a scapegoat offered up to protect someone with more power? The case grew murkier, and then decades later, an even darker theory emerged. In 2010, Steve Hodel, a retired LAPD detective, made a startling claim. He believed his own father, Dr. George Hodel, had killed not only Elizabeth Short, the infamous Black Dahlia in Los Angeles in 1947, but also Lucil Lalu in Manila in 1967. George Hodel was a prime suspect in the Black Dahlia case, though never charged. He was a doctor, trained in surgery, with a reputation for brilliance and cruelty in equal measure. After leaving Los Angeles under a cloud of suspicion, he relocated to the Philippines in the late 1960s. And where did he live? Just blocks from Lucille's beauty parlor. The parallels were haunting. Both Elizabeth Short and Lucil Lalu were young women. Both were surgically dismembered with cold precision. Both had body parts carefully disposed of, some frozen beforehand. Both murders carried the same clinical signature, as though their killer saw them not as people, but as experiments. Steve Hodel even noted another eerie coincidence. Lucille's remains were found on a street named Zodiac, echoing the infamous Zodiac killer case in California, another crime that George Hodel had been loosely connected to. Was this a coincidence? Or had a man suspected of one of America's most infamous murders crossed an ocean and continued his crimes in Manila? If true, it would mean that Lucille was not only a victim of jealousy or betrayal, but part of a chilling international pattern. A predator who moved across borders, leaving mutilated women in his wake. But proof has never been found. No definitive link ties George Hodel to Lucille's murder. What remains are eerie similarities, compelling theories, and the disturbing possibility that Manila's most infamous unsolved case might share a thread with Hollywood's darkest legend. And so, more than 50 years later, the murder of Lucil Lalu remains unsolved. Patrolman Vera, the jealous policeman, was never convicted. Florante Reos, the young lover, was cleared. José Luis Santiano, the dental student, confessed and recanted, leaving a trail of confusion. And George Hodel, the American doctor, is long dead, his secrets buried with him. What endures is Lucille's story. She was the original chop-chop lady, the first in a series of brutal dismemberment murders that would shock the Philippines in the years to come. But hers is remembered most, not only because of its brutality, but because of the questions it left behind. Who really killed her? Was it jealousy, betrayal, or the hand of an international killer? Even now, Manila whispers her name. Her murder was not just a crime, it was a legend, a warning, a symbol of how vulnerable even the most successful and independent women could be in a society ready to punish them for stepping out of line. And perhaps the most chilling truth of all, her killer walked free. We can only imagine the fear she felt in her final moments, the betrayal, the violence, the cold hands that turned her body into something to be carved apart. And we can only remember her as she was, a young woman who built her own success, who fought for her independence, who deserved so much more than to be reduced to a gruesome headline. You've just heard the story of Lucil Lalu, the original Chop Chop lady. But what do you think? Was this the act of a jealous policeman, a desperate student, or something much darker? A killer connected to the Black Dahlia? Share your theory in the comments. I'll be reading them all. And if this case chilled you as much as it chilled me, don't forget to subscribe to Dark Chronicles Asia. Every week we bring you another true story, another dark mystery that reminds us of the darkness hiding behind ordinary lives. Until next time, stay safe.